I still live in the house I grew up in. I guess that's rare. And it's not just the house I grew up in, but it's also the one that broke me. This house has been many things: a shelter, a prison, a secret keeper, a place where things were swept under the rug, hidden in drawers, pushed into the corners of attic. And for the longest time, it held parts of me that I didn't know how to face. You know what always bothered me about this house? The ceilings. They are so low I can touch it with my fingertips in every room. As a kid, it wasn't really a thing, but later as a teenager, it started to feel symbolic. Like no matter how much I tried to grow, there was always something pressing down on me. I guess like I couldn't stretch into something that I was supposed to be. It just felt like this house was shrinking around me. And sometimes I guess it still does. One of the many jobs I hated doing around here was sweeping up the attic. My dad made me do it a couple times a year. Oh, and I remember this was the worst thing I could do around here. Of course, the roof was not high enough, so you basically had to be bent over while you're sweeping. In certain parts of the attic, I had to go on my knees and use the smaller brush to sweep. I remember there being a lot of dust, a lot of wasps' nests. Glass wool would be there. I remember I would come down itching like crazy. And if you'd ever worked with glass wool before, you know that even when you shower, it doesn't really help. Those little particles really get into your skin, and it's horrible. And I hated it. And not just because it was awful, but because my brother never got to do it. And yes, he's 6 years younger than me, but even after he was old enough, they never made him do it. I was always the one. So I guess I still resent that. Just recently, my daughter torn down the poster I had on my door for decades. I put it there, like, I believe when I was around 13 or 14 years old. And I just held this piece in my hand, this piece of paper. It had Friends cast on it. I held it in my hands and I stared at it. And it felt like it was a time capsule. Like I still remember who I was when I put it up there on the door. And it's just this time between then and now just sort of disappeared. It's like I just jumped into another timeline. Time is weird like that. I swear it's amazing how you forget about these small things and then decades later they feel so monumental in some way. I guess I was really trying to feel the last time I held this paper, you know. It was like touching a memory, but it was also a feeling like this just happened yesterday, you know. So weird. I don't know. And you know, this house is memory on its own, and you know, I see things every day, but there is just some things that I don't notice every day and are there, you know. And this was the same with this poster. It's so weird. I'm 41 now, and I was 13 or 14 when I last held this piece of paper, you know. It's strange how objects can hold stories, how walls can keep secrets, and how a house can actually remember stuff that you wanted to forget. When I was a kid, I couldn't stay inside this house for too long. The walls were just too loud, even in silence. So I would run to the forest and nearby hills, to neighbor's farm. I used to help there a lot. They had a lot of kids and I had a lot of friends back then. And yeah, it was fun time at neighbors' farms. I've been afraid of snakes since I was a kid. But mowing the lawn just made this fear worse. Uh, because too many times I would be out there, you know, cutting grass, and one would slither right in front of me. Oh my God, the terrors I remember. I would scream, I would drop the mower, I would run inside the house, hide there for a couple of hours, really hoping I wouldn't have to go back there. But my father always made me go back there to finish the job. Ah, and I remember I would scan the area in front of me, looking for the snake and hoping I wouldn't see one. Um, yeah, it was a lot of stress and anxiety around mowing the grass. But I kept going. I had no choice, so I did it. And to this day, I still look twice. And sometimes I get startled because I see maybe a little twig or a piece of stick, you know. I always have the same reaction still. It's not as big of a fear than it used to be, but I still can't stand them. So, yeah. Oh, we used to renovate this house over and over again. I remember I was like 8 or 9 years old when I first started helping with renovations. And this was not a small thing, you know. I would shuffle the dust and all the sand that would get smashed in the process, carrying wooden beams and rocks. And this house is quite, I want to say, artistically renovated, but not in an aesthetic way. It was just fixed with anything we would have at the time. We didn't have a lot of money, and my father would fix things rarely the right way. It was important that it was not leaking and that it was not falling apart. But how it looked after, it didn't matter. So the house has a lot of character, if I can say like that. There is a lot of little pieces that you can just notice around the house. But yeah, this was life back then. But now I feel like The only thing being renovated in this house is actually me. I'm renovating myself in the space that broke me. But my father believed in hard work only when my hands were doing it. He taught me a lot without even saying anything, but mostly that being tired is better than being seen. I think that's something I learned very early on. Being tired just became my safety net. It was just easier than being vulnerable because being seen didn't feel safe. When you grow up in a house where your feelings are inconvenient, where your body doesn't belong to you, where your voice gets mocked or ignored, you learn to disappear in plain sight. You become the helpful one, the strong one, the one who just gets on with it. And now I'm learning to be seen for who I am, and it's uncomfortable and scary, but it's real, and I feel real is worth it. This house kept a lot of secrets. Some were not mine to carry, and some were far too heavy for a child. I don't know if I'll be ever ready to tell them all, but they live here. Tenants came and went. Some were struggling. Some left strange energy behind. There's heaviness in these walls. I try to cleanse the energy, um, but I think some of it soaked too deep into the walls. And I don't know if I will ever love this house, but I am trying really hard to feel comfortable in it now. I've tried everything to switch the energy around in this house. Cleansing rituals, incense, moving furniture around. But I think the only thing that is changing the energy, it's me. Looking back, I'm surprised that wheat was the only thing I used to cope. I had no one to talk to about how I felt, so I just escaped. That's what this house taught me for the longest time. If you can't change it, escape it. I grew up fast in this house, just because I had to. I was always aware of how to behave, how to stay out of trouble for the most part, how not to say too much. This house taught me to be quiet, to shrink, to people please. And maybe that's why I was always trying to get out. Climbing hills, biking to friend's house, spending every possible second outside of this house. Sometimes I think I never really grew up. I just grew older because I still live in this house. But now I'm rebuilding myself and it feels better. Definitely more relaxed and comfortable, but I can't escape the past in this house. It's just too many memories. So many versions of me lived here. The little girl who shoveled sand during renovations, the teenager who hated her body, The young woman who smoked weed just to escape the reality and to numb the noise. The version who hid her shaking hands from the world, and now the one who's trying to make peace with all of them. So, for the past week, I've been doing this thing called shadow work, and every day I write out a different prompt. And what I'm noticing is that so many of these prompts and questions that I'm answering are full of pain and blocks and patterns. The beliefs that still control me, they all trace back here in this house. This place shaped how I saw myself and how I still struggle to be seen. And this challenge is all about digging through the parts that I buried here. In this house, in this body, in this story. It's strange how I used to dream of escaping this place. And now and I, I realized that the only way out was going in. So weird. Oh, this house was always cold. Like literally. The insulation was bad. The rooms were drafty. Of course, we had to save the wood and electricity, so my brother and I would always layer up and still shiver, and we would lose power a lot, especially in the winter time. I remember once, I think we were 3 weeks without electricity. The icy rain that made a lot of trees fall onto the roads, so we were cut off from civilization. We were just locked inside this house without electricity, using every candle we had. And good thing we had a gas stove. We used that to heat ourselves and wash in warm water, drink teas. But then also we would run out of gas as well. So I look at it as a fun experience. It was interesting to experience that. The only time I truly felt good in this house was when I was alone in it. I remember when I was old enough to stay at home alone while my parents and my brother went for holidays for a couple of weeks. And I would just stay home alone. And I remember those summer storms were awesome. I remember just outside being the total chaos, rain, thunder, very loud, dark, and I would be nice, cozy under the blanket on the couch, watching this chaos outside the window. And I truly felt safe because no one was home. I was alone and the house was quiet. I'll never forget that feeling. I still love storms. When I'm at home, that is. Otherwise, I'm terrified of the thunder. I cannot be outside. It's the same like with snakes. Panic, straight, 100%. Now, decades later, I'm learning how to create this same feeling, not just in this house, but also in me, peace on the inside. I used to think that I had to leave this house to find it. And turns out I had to come home to myself right here in the very same place that I was trying to escape from. There's something poetic about healing in the same place that broke you. It's like painting over the old cracks and they are still there. I don't want to erase this place from my story. I just want to rewrite what it means to me. Because I didn't just grow up here, I'm still growing here. Not the kind of growing that needs higher ceilings, but the kind that takes you inward. And I used to think healing meant forgetting, moving on, leaving things behind. But now I know healing means remembering without falling apart. So this is where I come from, but it's not where I stop. And the house is still standing, and so am I. Until next time, take care.